What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved entertainers sits down for what should be a routine late-night interview, only to find himself face to face with a host who seems determined to tear him down? Tonight, we're diving deep into the explosive confrontation that left audiences stunned and Jamie Foxx walking off set in the middle of a live taping. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a masterclass in how personal vendettas can destroy professional relationships. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really triggered this meltdown, because what you're about to hear will change how you see late-night television forever. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was supposed to be Jamie Foxx's victory lap. Fresh off his recovery from a mysterious health scare that had kept him out of the spotlight for months, Jamie was ready to return to the public eye with his trademark charm and humor. The audience was electric, genuinely excited to see one of their favorite performers back in action. But from the moment Jamie walked onto that stage, something felt off. Stephen Colbert's introduction was unusually cold, lacking the warmth and enthusiasm he typically reserved for A-list guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, Jamie Foxx," he announced with what seemed like forced politeness, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Jamie, ever the professional, bounded onto the stage with his usual energy, waving to the crowd and soaking in their applause. He looked healthy, vibrant, ready to entertain. "Jamie, great to have you back," Stephen said as they settled into their chairs. But his tone carried an undertone that Jamie immediately picked up on. "Great to be back, Stephen. Thanks for having me, man." "The audience is incredible tonight," Jamie responded, trying to inject some genuine warmth into the interaction. "Yes, well, they're excited to see you alive and well. There were certainly questions about that for a while, weren't there?" Stephen's comment hit like a slap, delivered with a smile that made it even more cutting. Jamie's expression shifted slightly, but he maintained his composure. "Yeah, health scares happen. I'm grateful to be here, grateful for my family, my team, everyone who supported me through that time." "Supported you through what exactly? Because you've been pretty vague about the whole thing. Some people are saying you're being deliberately mysterious for publicity reasons." Stephen leaned forward, his journalist instincts taking over in the worst possible way. The audience began to sense the tension. This wasn't the playful banter they expected. Jamie straightened in his chair, his media training kicking in. "Stephen, I've shared what I'm comfortable sharing. My health, my family's privacy. That's important to me. I think people understand that. Do they, though? Because social media has been pretty brutal. Some people are saying you faked the whole thing, that it was a publicity stunt for your upcoming projects. What do you say to those people?" Jamie's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'd say those people don't know what they're talking about. I'd say those people weren't there when my daughter was scared she might lose her father. I'd say those people can believe whatever they want, but I know my truth." Stephen wasn't backing down. "But surely you can understand their skepticism. You disappear for months. No real explanation. And then suddenly you're back with a Netflix special and a new movie. The timing seems convenient." "Convenient?" Jamie's voice rose slightly, enough for the audience to notice. "You think almost dying is convenient? You think putting my family through hell is convenient? What exactly are you trying to say here, Stephen?" "I'm not trying to say anything. I'm asking questions that I think the audience wants answered. Isn't that what journalism is about?" Stephen's tone was becoming more aggressive, more confrontational. "This isn't journalism, man. This is a late-night talk show. People come here to laugh, to have fun, to escape from their problems for a while. What you're doing right now, this isn't entertainment. It's an ambush." The studio audience was completely silent now, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Stephen pressed on, seemingly oblivious to the discomfort he was creating. "An ambush? Jamie, these are legitimate questions. Your fans deserve transparency. They supported you. They were worried about you. They deserve to know the truth." "The truth?" Jamie stood up slightly in his chair, his composure finally beginning to crack. "The truth is, I almost lost everything. The truth is, I spent weeks not knowing if I'd ever perform again, ever make another movie, ever see my kids grow up. The truth is that while I was fighting for my life, people like you were spreading rumors and conspiracy theories for clicks and ratings." "People like me? What's that supposed to mean?" "It means people who would rather tear someone down than build them up. People who see a man at his lowest point and think that's the perfect time to attack. People who hide behind the excuse of journalism when really they're just being cruel." Stephen's face was flushing now, his own temper starting to show. "I resent that implication, Jamie. I've built my career on asking tough questions, on holding people accountable. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing publicity. Holding people accountable for what? For getting sick? For having a medical emergency? What exactly do you think I need to be held accountable for? The tension in the studio was suffocating. Even the camera operators seemed uncomfortable, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away. But Stephen wasn't finished. Maybe I should be asking you what you need to be held accountable for, Stephen shot back, his voice dripping with condescension. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like someone who disappeared when things got tough, left his projects hanging, left his co-stars scrambling, and now wants to waltz back and like nothing happened. The audience gasped audibly. Several people in the front row looked genuinely shocked at Stephen's words. Jamie's eyes narrowed, and for the first time since sitting down, he looked genuinely angry. Left my projects hanging? Stephen, I was in the hospital. I was fighting for my life. Do you understand what that means? Do you have any idea what it's like to wake up and not remember weeks of your life? To have doctors telling your family to prepare for the worst? I understand that you had health issues, Jamie, but I also understand that you're a professional with responsibilities. When you sign contracts, when people invest millions of dollars in your projects, when hundreds of people depend on you for their jobs, maybe you owe them more than radio silence. Jamie stood up from his chair completely now, towering over Stephen, who remained seated, trying to maintain his composure, but clearly rattled by Jamie's physical presence. Radio silence. My team communicated with everyone who needed to know. Legal handled the contracts. Insurance covered the productions. Everything was done properly, professionally. But apparently that wasn't enough for people like you who needed every detail of my medical crisis for your entertainment. Sit down, Jamie, Stephen said, trying to regain control of the interview. You're making this more dramatic than it needs to be. Dramatic? You want to see dramatic? You want to know what dramatic really looks like. Jamie's voice was rising, and the audience could feel the energy in the room shifting dangerously. Dramatic is waking up in a hospital bed with tubes down your throat. Dramatic is watching your daughter cry because she thinks her father might die. Dramatic is having to relearn how to do basic things because your brain isn't working the same way it used to. Stephen's face was getting redder, but instead of backing down, he doubled down on his attack. And yet here you are perfectly fine doing publicity for your new projects. Funny how quickly you recovered once there was money to be made. The studio fell into complete silence. Even the band members were staring in disbelief. Jamie looked around the room, seeing the faces of audience members who had come expecting entertainment and instead were witnessing what felt like a public execution. You know what, Stephen? I came here tonight because I thought we were friends. I thought this was going to be fun. Maybe we'd laugh about some stories, talk about my new work, give people a good time. But this isn't about entertainment for you, is it? This is personal. Personal? I barely know you, Jamie. This is about accountability, about transparency with your audience. Don't lie to me and don't lie to these people. This is about the awards ceremony 3 years ago. This is about the joke I made during my speech. This is about your fragile ego not being able to handle being the punchline for once in your life. Stephen's composure cracked completely. That's ridiculous. I don't even remember what you're talking about. Oh, you remember. You remember because you brought it up to 3 different people at the after-party. You remember because you've been taking shots at me in your monologue ever since. You remember because your writers have been pitching jokes about me for months. And tonight, you thought you finally had your chance to get me back. The audience was transfixed. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong anymore. This was years of Hollywood politics playing out in real time. Stephen was sweating now, his carefully constructed television persona crumbling under the pressure. You're being paranoid, Jamie. Not everything is about you. Paranoid? Your own writers told my publicist about the meeting you had last week. They told her about how you wanted to take Jamie down a peg. They were uncomfortable with it. Stephen, your own people think you've crossed a line. Stephen's eyes widened slightly, clearly caught off guard by this revelation. I don't know what you think you heard. But I know exactly what I heard because they recorded it. They were so concerned about what you were planning that they documented it. You want to talk about accountability? Let's talk about a talk show host who uses his platform to settle personal scores. The camera operators were frantically adjusting their angles, trying to capture every moment of this unprecedented confrontation. Stephen was visibly shaken now, his usual quick wit completely abandoned. That's completely out of context. Whatever you think you know. I know that you spent 20 minutes in that meeting talking about how you wanted to humiliate me on live television. I know that you specifically said you wanted to make me squirm like the arrogant piece of garbage he is. Those were your exact words, Stephen. Your exact words. Several audience members were pulling out their phones despite the no recording policy. The energy in the room was electric, dangerous. Stephen looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route. Jamie, I think you're misunderstanding the creative process. Sometimes we brainstorm ideas that sound harsh, but creative process? You call planning someone's public humiliation a creative process? You call using your show as a weapon against people who've offended you creative? You're twisting everything. That's not what happened. Then tell me what happened, Stephen. Tell these people what really happened. Tell them why you decided to ambush a man who just went through the worst experience of his life. Tell them why you thought tonight was the perfect time to try to destroy my reputation. Stephen was speechless, his mouth opening and closing without any words coming out. The band leader was making subtle gestures to his musicians, clearly preparing for some kind of emergency commercial break. But the producers seemed frozen, unsure whether to cut away from what was clearly becoming the most talked-about moment in late-night television history. I'll tell you what happened, Jamie continued, his voice now controlled, but filled with righteous anger. You got embarrassed 3 years ago when I made a joke about your show during my acceptance speech. It was a throwaway line, a piece of harmless ribbing that everyone else laughed at and forgot about. But not you. You've been nursing that grudge ever since, waiting for your chance to get revenge. That's not true, Stephen said weakly. But his denial lacked any conviction. It is true, and everyone in this room can see it. Everyone watching at home can see it. You're not a journalist tonight, Stephen. You're not an entertainer. You're just a bitter man with a platform who thought he could use it to hurt someone who made him feel small. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. Several people in the front rows were visibly uncomfortable, shifting in their seats and exchanging worried glances. This had gone far beyond entertainment and into something much more raw and personal. I want you to look at these people, Jamie said, gesturing to the audience. Look at their faces. They came here tonight to have fun, to laugh, to forget about their problems for an hour. Instead, you've turned this into your personal therapy session, working out your issues at my expense and theirs. Stephen finally found his voice, but it was shaky and defensive. I'm just doing my job, asking the questions that people want answered. No, you're not. You're being cruel. There's a difference between tough questions and cruelty. And what you've done tonight is pure cruelty. You've taken a man who almost died, who fought his way back to health, who's trying to rebuild his life and career, and you've tried to tear him down for your own satisfaction. And you know what the saddest part is? Jamie continued, his voice now carrying a weight that seemed to fill the entire studio. The saddest part is that I actually respected you. I watched your show. I laughed at your jokes. I defended you when people said you were too political or too harsh. I thought you were someone who used comedy to make the world a little better, not someone who used it to make people feel worse about themselves. Stephen's face was now completely flushed, beads of sweat visible on his forehead under the studio lights. He looked like a man who had severely miscalculated and was now facing the consequences in the most public way possible. Jamie, I think we should take a commercial break and... Jamie's voice cut through Stephen's attempt to escape. We're not taking a break. You wanted to do this on live television in front of all these people, so we're going to finish it on live television. You don't get to start a fight and then run away when it doesn't go the way you planned. The audience was completely transfixed, some people literally on the edge of their seats. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of what was clearly becoming one of the most explosive interviews in television history. You want to know what accountability looks like, Stephen? It looks like admitting when you've made a mistake. It looks like acknowledging when you've hurt someone unnecessarily. It looks like being man enough to apologize when you've crossed a line that shouldn't have been crossed. I don't think I need to apologize for doing my job, Stephen said, but his voice was barely above a whisper. Now, your job is to entertain people, to make them laugh, to give them a break from the darkness in the world. Your job is not to add to that darkness. Your job is not to kick people when they're down. Your job is not to use your platform as a weapon against anyone who's ever made you feel insecure. Jamie walked closer to Stephen's desk, his presence commanding the entire studio. But let me tell you what my job is. My job is to entertain people, to make them forget their troubles, to bring joy into their lives through music and movies and comedy. My job is to be grateful for every opportunity one get to do what I love. My job is to come back from the worst experience of my life stronger and more appreciative than ever. He turned to face the audience directly, speaking to them as much as to Stephen. These people didn't come here tonight to watch you work through your personal issues. They didn't pay for tickets or clear their schedules to see you try to humiliate someone. They came here because they wanted to laugh, because they wanted to feel good, because they wanted to celebrate the fact that someone they care about is healthy and back doing what he loves. Several audience members nodded. Some even began to clap softly. Jamie's words were resonating with them in a way that Stephen's attack clearly hadn't. And you know what? They deserve better than this. They deserve a host who lifts people up instead of tearing them down. They deserve someone who uses humor to heal instead of to hurt. They deserve someone who understands that with a platform like this comes responsibility not just to ratings and advertisers, but to the people who trust you with their time and attention. Stephen tried to interject. Jamie, I think I'm being honest. Maybe that's something you should try sometime. Maybe instead of ambushing your guests, you should try being honest about your own motivations. Maybe instead of hiding behind the excuse of journalism, you should admit that this was never about serving your audience. This was about serving your ego. Jamie picked up his water glass from the side table and took a slow sip, letting the silence hang in the air. When he spoke again, his voice was calmer, but somehow more devastating. You know, Stephen, I've been in this business for a long time. I've seen a lot of people come and go. I've seen careers rise and fall. And I've learned that the people who last, the people who build something meaningful, are the ones who understand that success isn't about tearing others down. It's about lifting everyone up with you. He set the glass down and looked directly at Stephen. But I've also seen people who get a little bit of power and think that gives them the right to be cruel. People who mistake meanness for intelligence, who think that humiliating someone makes them look strong. Those people don't last, Stephen. They might have their moment, but eventually people see through them. The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. Stephen looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. I came here tonight in good faith. I came here ready to laugh, ready to share some stories, ready to give your audience a good time. I came here as a friend. But you had other plans, didn't you? You thought you were going to get your revenge for a joke I made 3 years ago that I honestly don't even remember making. Jamie straightened his jacket and looked around the studio one more time. Well, congratulations, Stephen. You got your revenge. You ambushed a man who was just trying to get his life back on track. You used your show as a weapon. You disappointed every single person in this audience who came here expecting better from you. He started walking toward the edge of the stage, but then stopped and turned back. But you know what? I'm not going to let you ruin this for me. I'm not going to let your bitterness and your small-mindedness affect how I feel about being alive, being healthy, being able to do what I love. I'm not going to let you take that joy away from me. The audience began to applaud, slowly at first, then building to a thunderous ovation. Several people stood up, then more, until nearly the entire studio audience was on their feet applauding Jamie, while Stephen sat frozen behind his desk. And to everyone here tonight, to everyone watching at home, I want you to know that this isn't what entertainment should look like. This isn't what kindness looks like. This isn't what using your platform responsibly looks like. You deserve better than this. And I promise you that every time I get the chance to entertain you, I'm going to give you something that builds you up instead of tearing you down. Jamie waved to the audience, who were still applauding wildly. He walked to the edge of the stage where the band was set up and shook hands with the band leader, who whispered something supportive in his ear. Jamie, wait, Stephen called out desperately, finally standing up from behind his desk. Don't leave like this. We can work this out. Jamie turned back one final time, and his expression was almost pitying. Stephen, the only thing that needs to be worked out is whatever is broken inside you that made you think this was okay. That's not my job to fix. That's yours. With that, Jamie Foxx walked off the stage to continued thunderous applause from the audience, leaving Stephen Colbert standing alone behind his desk, his face red with embarrassment and shame. The cameras captured every moment as Stephen looked around helplessly, clearly unsure of how to recover from what had just happened. The band leader, apparently deciding to take control of the situation, signaled his musicians, and they began playing Jamie off with an impromptu jazz number that seemed to celebrate his dignity and grace under fire. The audience continued clapping and cheering, many of them looking back at Stephen with expressions ranging from disappointment to disgust. Stephen finally sat back down, ran his hands through his hair, and looked directly into the camera. For a moment, it seemed like he might try to explain himself, might try to salvage something from the wreckage of the interview. Instead, he simply said, "We'll be right back." And the show cut to commercial, leaving viewers around the world stunned by what they had just witnessed. This wasn't just a celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a masterclass in how personal vendettas can destroy professional relationships, how power can corrupt even the most respected figures, and how grace under pressure can reveal someone's true character. Jamie Foxx walked off that stage with his dignity intact, while Stephen Colbert was left to face the consequences of letting his personal feelings override his professional responsibilities. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Do you believe Stephen Colbert crossed the line, or was Jamie Foxx being too sensitive? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the moments that define Hollywood. This is the kind of raw, unfiltered drama that reminds us that behind all the glitz and glamour, these are real people with real emotions, real grudges, and real consequences when things go.